Love him or hate him, nobody knows more about Brooklyn and local politics than Kings County Democratic boss Frank Seddio. On this week's episode of Beat of the Week with Kelly Mena, we visit the king himself at his Canarsie community law practice.
Well, I started in Brooklyn politics when I was about 18 years old, and I was introduced to the Thomas Jefferson Club by my uncle, who owned the funeral parlor across the street, Frank Guarino, and started going down there. I liked politics. I liked what I was doing, and that was around 1965. Started working. My first job at that time was in the New York City Housing Authority as a what they call a caretaker. Basically, I was a janitor. That was my first job out of high school, because it paid more money than it did to be a bank teller. Served in the police department from October 67 to May of 1980, when nothing better than being a police officer, a New York City police officer. So I ran and coordinated all the parades and events that were held out in Brooklyn and then subsequently in the city. In 69, this group of people came into the office where I worked and said they wanted to run a parade on Eastern Parkway, and it was going to be for West Indians. And everybody looked and said, who the heck is going to come to that event? How many people could show up? And I was 23 years old, and they put me in charge of it because nobody wanted to work on Labor Day. And that became what's called the West Indian American Day Parade in Carnival. Last year I was the parade coordinator. I was actually the Grand Marshal of the parade. So I have this much of Trinidadian in me. So I loved doing those kinds of things, and that was my favorite job in the whole world, was being the coordinator and the community affairs officer. And I became the Democratic leader in 2010 and the county leader in 2012. I remember being 12 years old and telling my mother she was going to live in the West Wing of the White House. So, as a matter of fact, in my plan for life, I was supposed to be the Vice President of the United States right now. I didn't reach that goal, but I didn't do too bad. I didn't do too bad. Yeah, I just became king instead of vice president. I love it. Actually, when I started in politics, the first thing, one of the most important things that happens in politics is getting people on the ballot, and that's what's going on right now. Tuesday was the first day to collect petitions, and in my time, I collected the most petitions of anybody. I would collect 500 signatures every year for the candidates that we were supporting. So and those are door-to-door signatures that I would knock on people's doors in a particular district that I represent, that I worked in. And it came to a point after so many years that people just knew everybody, and it was a great way of contacting with the people. But I was always a people person. I liked working with people. I belonged to many organizations. From when I was a kid, I was a joiner. So I was always involved in some organization. Well, it's a nice word, progressive. What does it mean? I haven't figured it out. I think it's people who are not in power who want to take out the people who are in power. They call themselves progressives. There was a time when some people were called reformers. They were called liberals. Now it's the new chic word is progressive. I'm not sure what that means. To the best of my knowledge, and to this date, I have not had one of them identify anything that was, except I'm older and you're younger. Many of the African American leaders who we have in the community now are really upset with the fact that the progressives, quote, are inundating neighborhoods and basically gentrifying neighborhoods, and then suddenly deciding that they know what's best for everybody. Right. They want to tell those who spent years and years in those communities, who fought very hard for the rights and for the needs when there was high crime and when there was serious problems in those neighborhoods. They're now having to address quote progressives who think they know what's best for them. But I believe that the common sense Democrats who deal with the everyday issues of communities, maybe that's the difference. That the progressives have a philosophical approach to the world, and what I call the common sense Democrats, the everyday people who work in the communities, have the practical understanding of what it means. It's very nice to have the luxury of focusing on a larger picture, theoretically and philosophically, when you don't have the pains and needs and problems that have to be addressed on the local level, which is done daily by the various district leaders and elected officials who represent what I'd like to call the other Democrats. A good example is how they'll take buses to Pennsylvania to go fight for Hillary Clinton, but I can't get them to take the train south to fight for a congressional seat in southern Brooklyn that a Republican holds. I'd like to say it's practical politics. It's about doing what's needed for the borough to make Brooklyn a better place for all people, and not just one group of people. It never should be that one group suffers at the benefit of another. There has to be an equal ability to participate, or we're going to lose those voters. See, I think it's incredible to see that things that would normally bother people in 50 years ago or 30 years ago is not there in the young, under 30 group of people who do not see things, who see things as with more equality and with just everyday acceptance that would not have been accepted 30 years ago by anybody, Democrats or Republicans. I see it in two ways, both one as an ambitious effort, which is good, and also as an optimistic effort. And we're going to be able to change the world, and that's great. That's really the future